Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 60-second take. Good evening to everyone. Hope everyone's having a fantastic weekend. So excited to be here with you all. I am Bear Duplessis. Going to be having a fabulous, fabulous show tonight, and we are so obliged that you guys have decided to join us. We've got a wonderful guest and a surprise guest this evening. But before we get everything kicked off, let's talk about tonight's show's sponsor, Drew Estate Cigars. The Drew Estate story is one of daring, heartbreak, and success, but most of all, one of passion for cigars and the country of Nicaragua, where they have been making cigars since 1998. Jonathan Drew and Marvin Samel are not your average cigar makers. Their story does not start in Cuba or with fathers in the cigar business. It started with a dream, and through their can-do spirit and never-say-die attitude made Drew Estate one of the premier cigar manufacturers on the planet. So that brings us to our guest and surprise guest this evening. So excited to welcome in two of my favorite guys in the industry. And it's just an absolute pleasure to have both of them on tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome in Mr. Mike Rosales and the Danny Vasquez of RoMa Craft Cigars. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Very good. How about yourself, my man?
Oh, I am, as they say, living the dream, man. Living the dream.
Danny, how you doing? I'm doing great. Hey, I have to go back. Do you have that script, your intro script, memorized?
Do I have that script memorized? No, it's only the second time I've read it, so no, not quite. I'm sure I'll get to that point.
I didn't see a lot of reading like this, so that's good. It's good.
Good. So yeah, so my professional vibes are paying off. That's good. That's fantastic. So, and I haven't had any beer yet, which I'm about to correct here in just a second. So, Danny was regaling us with tales of the rum that he was drinking before the show. So, what are you still drinking that rum, Danny? Or are we changing it up for the show?
This is a little bit to loosen it up. It's a little dovetail, which JD, and it's really the only bottle I can reach to.
Dovetail rum. Okay. Well, I'm drinking a High West 2017 barrel aged Victory of the Sea.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ballast Point.
Yeah.
So
I got my bottle Pellegrino.
Already finished mine.
Oh, what vintage is that? What vintage is that Pellegrino, Mike?
It's the 2018. It's fabulous.
Oh man, God, dude.
Cheers.
Cheers. Absolutely, gents. Really appreciate again you guys joining us tonight. Now, the reason I actually specifically asked Mike to be on is and Danny, I think you can comment on this as well. Is that I think that for the most part, a lot of people know Skip Martin as a lot when it comes to when you ask someone about RoMa Craft, they know a lot about Skip because he very much puts himself out there. He's very much in the public. He's got kind of his pulse on the industry and its fans, its consumers, its manufacturers, and everything. And so he's pretty well versed in what's going on in, I would say, both arenas. And but I often comment, and I told you this before the show, Mike. I said I often comment when people say, "Hey, do you know these guys pretty well?" And I say that I think I know you guys, decently well from my perspective. And I've always said that, Mike, you are Skip's yang to his ying, or you're the ying to his yang, or which way you want to put it. But you offer a big balance to that partnership. Before we get into the partnership itself, though, I would like to hear your story because I don't think a lot of people know how you got into the cigar industry. So could you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Real quickly, because even though I know you know it, I've seen this is one of those topics that gets discussed quite a bit. But essentially, I started importing in tobacco early on. Instead of just kind of creating a line, a cigar line, what I started doing was importing tobacco and then placing rollers in cigar shops here locally in Texas. So down at Jorge's, down at Stogie's, down in Houston, at Ken Pennington's shop called Elite over in Dallas, here in Austin at Heroes and Legacies with Richard Hutchinson. So I would bring them in. We would roll cigars. I would bring up the tobacco, and actually, Raul Disla, who now works with Saka, was probably one of my first rollers that I brought in, and he worked for me for about 8 years here in Texas. And so the goal was to really kind of one, if I could bring some tobacco in and work on a blend in a store that actually was suited to what the shop liked, then then I would basically sub out the manufacturing stuff out to to bring in the house blends, right? So for example, if I sit down, I said, hey, you host the roller, basically get him to and from, I'll bring in the materials, so the press, all this, all the machinery that you would need to make the cigars. We bring in, about 2,000 pounds of tobacco, and then we would start to make different blends. And if we honed in on something, then we would mass produce certain sizes and certain blends at a fixed rate, which would become like the house blend for that shop. And so, I mean, it's really great to see that Raul, so the FDA kind of changed away some of the I wasn't technically set up to be a manufacturer, and that's what we were doing. So, and because it was on site, I couldn't actually go through and get all of the each location a manufacturing permit to do it. So we had to shut it down. But his wife ended up getting pregnant, and he ended up having to go back. He ended up starting to work with Nata, and then probably a year or two later, he ended up hooking up with Steve Stockhead. And Steve Stockhead helped him. And the two of them at Nata have done some really good things with what they're doing. So,
and what year was this when you were starting out with these
I
rollers?
started in 2006, and then 2007 was the first. So I started bringing the idea back and forth from Costa Rica. I'd gone up to Nicaragua to buy some tobacco, met up with Raul. He had just left AJ Fernandez, and told me he had basically he's half Puerto Rican, so he had a work permit and to come in. And so anyway, so I brought him in and came up to a couple shops here and just kind of kicked around the ideas. Said, is this guy's asking me for a job? This sounds like a really kind of cool angle. I've never seen it done before. And really quick, a lot of, the price point for it was pretty good. I mean, not really to talk numbers, but I mean, basically to, I wholesale the tobacco costs. I broke even to get him here, as long as he was, he was maintained and can, had a job and was fed and was hosted. It was pretty golden. It got difficult whenever we had to pick up and go to Lubbock or go to Dallas or go to Houston, and after a month or so of being at one place, and ended up settling in a couple of stores and got self-sufficient. But early on, there was a lot of juggling. But my angle at it was, hey, in the long term, if I can produce these house blends for these cigars and do volume on them, like that was a really good thing. So if I could basically show you a good value proposition, which was, hey, we're going to make a cigar that basically your guys are backing. I mean, they like the product and it's a good price point. So so the margins in them were very, very good. And it was a really kind of a way for an outsider to really kind of create some really, if I wasn't in the cigar industry, so I had to figure out how do you get to know some of these guys, and so it really worked out really well. So shortly on, probably 2009, 2010, I had met Skip Martin, who's my business partner. He's the Ma in RoMa, and he came up to me and he knew that I had some rollers here in Austin, and said, hey, I was making these cigars. Well, basically what he had done is he gone down to the Camacho factory with Christian Aurora before they sold it to Davidoff, and he was basically buying cigars that they weren't using anymore, and he was bringing them in and kind of like a lost and found before there was a lost and found. That's the best way to describe it, and was selling them in his shop and in Galveston. It was doing very, very well. And so he got hit by a hurricane and said, hey, could you reproduce something like this? And I said, well, I don't have the tobacco here in the States because it was heavier, thicker types of tobacco. So I said, Esteban, Raul's brother, is still in Nicaragua. I'm going to Nicaragua here in a couple of weeks. And so we took the cigar apart, kind of analyzed it, and came up with some different blends, and came back with, the first kind of run. This is December 2010, or probably earlier than that.
Was this Adrian cigars or was this RoMa?
Well, yeah, Adrian shortly came. Between that, Adrian's did come out. So Adrian's was my son was born in 2007. So right after that is whenever I launched Adrian's Costa Rican cigars. And and regionally got some really good traction on that. Had a Connecticut, a Habano, and a Maduro, Habano 2000, and Maduro that was really, really good. But so anyway, that's kind of how I ran into Skip I think at one of the events over at FUMAR here in Cedar Park, Texas. And so he invited me over to his house, and we had some good conversations, and we had a lot in common and knew a lot of the same people. And so when he asked me to do, could you come up with the cigar? I was honored to do it and to try. I mean, because he, obviously he knew a lot of people, the same people that I did. And so when we came back with some different variations of Cro-Magnon, and he said, we can sell this. This is really, really good. Like, it wasn't really kind of like the cigar that he had made, but it was definitely, it was a game changer at the time for what was in the market.
I think that's incredibly fascinating that RoMa Craft's origins almost, were a higher end house blend, so to speak, because you were going around doing these events that basically were creating house blends for all these different cigar shops. And that, that's kind of the origin of RoMa Craft. Because if you just ask someone point blank today, would that be the beginnings of these incredibly complex cigars? I don't think anyone would really put the two and two together.
No,
so that's really
definitely evolved a lot since those days, for sure.
So let's fast forward a little bit. We're going to kind of bounce around a little bit tonight, and let's talk about some of these complex cigars that RoMa Craft is creating these days. You guys launched with Cro-Magnon, on Aquitaine, and Intemperance EC and Intemperance BA, and then then you guys start having what I would say fun. I'm going to use that word. And you guys start having fun and start doing some different stuff. I see that Danny is smoking. Is that the Sabertooth, Danny, that you're smoking?
That was Black Irish.
Black Irish. That's right. You showed it to me before the show. And I'm smoking the Neanderthal Genetic Deformity, which are two variations off of two of those original cigars. The Neanderthal was kind of, I guess, the fifth line that kind of came around and everything. But what are some of the projects now that Mike, that you said that you guys were working on for 2019?
So we had an honorable mention on your previous podcast in the Cro-Magnon Macedon. So this year we're going to do the Aquitaine Macedon.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna do an Aquitaine. It's the year of Aquitaine. So of Habano. So we have the Macedon coming out, which is a 4.5 box press. 4.5 by 60 box press. We have the Slobber Knocker, which is a 7.5 by 56.
Close foot? Still a close foot on that?
Still a close foot, yep. So the Macedon is a 24 count box. The Slobber Knocker will be a 10 count box. We have the Don Bosco, which is the Candela version of the Black Irish.
Oh, wow.
So that will be going out to a retailer out called Old Virginia with Gary Pesh out on probably in Q2. The first one coming out that's actually about to release probably in February, beginning of February. It's called the EC Goodness, which is a box press in the Connecticut shade in the Intemperance line that we do. So
like the Revenge, but now you guys are doing the EC.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
12 count box.
That is a 12 count box. So we have the EC Goodness, the Macedon, Slobber Knocker, then the Don Bosco. Then we have, we're doing a Cigar Dojo release called the Pennsatucky, which will be a famous exclusive for the Dojo guys.
So what's it called? The what Kentucky?
Pennsatucky. Pennsatucky.
Like Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I guess we can make some assumptions about what's going on in there.
I don't know. What would be the...
So it's in the Whiskey Rebellion blend in a Lonsdale. Yeah. Which is pretty dope. Love the Lonsdales.
So this
That's
is
an
like
by 44.
500 boxes.
Terrific. When's that happening for them?
I think they're talking between May, June timeframe is my understanding. Right, it'll be sometime before the trade show.
That's terrific. That's going to be great for those guys and great for that community. So I know you guys have been up a couple of times. been on that show in particular, and great community of
Well, your
guys.
first show, right? Your first interview?
I think that was Danny's first interview with RoMa, wasn't it?
I wasn't even here.
Did you get drunk? Was there drinking? Was there drinking involved
On the show?
I don't know.
Well, we went to the Great American Beer Festival.
We did go to the Great American Beer Festival. That was really awesome. Got to drink a lot of really cool Avery releases straight out of the barrel. That was fantastic. That was so we also there's 2 more cigars coming out this year.
Yeah, so there's a couple more shop exclusives. One for Riverside in Indiana, and that's going to be, it's called Craft 2019 Lawn Sale. So as Paul Skip, you've seen these cigars come out, multicolored cigars, and then the box flips, and on the other side of the box, the Craft XO cutter, and whatever that called the Turismo light, which is really, really cool. So look out for that. It's a great shop in Indiana. It's been around since
Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Yeah, and then the other is the re-release of Witchcraft. So it's the Witchcraft 2019, which is going to look a lot like Craft 2018, same shape and everything. Connecticut. It's going to Tobacology. So pretty excited about that.
Yeah, some really cool, some absolutely really cool projects that you guys are working on this year. That's fantastic. I love that it's. I'm personally excited that it's the year of the Aqua Tank, because I love that blend. It was one of my picks of the month at the retail shop I work at this year, for when we did our annual RoMa Halloween bash that got pushed to. Now it was on All Saints Day, so it had to get pushed a week because of scheduling and everything. We missed you this year, Danny. That was fun, but thank you for sending Skip, in substitution of you. So we appreciate that. So just felt bad that you had to go all the way to Idaho, man, and that was October. So in October in Idaho is like January or February down here. So
yeah, I've never been to Idaho, so I really didn't know what to expect. And the shop was in a city called Meridian, and they're the second largest city in Idaho. This is like a fun fact for everybody. There are 107,000 people in that city. And the Texas Stadium, the Longhorns play here in Austin, holds 107,000. So just to kind of like put that in perspective, and that shop, I mean, just absolutely kills it out. We on the vault, that was a really, really great fun event. But it was fun. No complaints.
Yeah, it's always fun when I see those statistics about small towns and everything. The stadium at the University of Tennessee, I think it's Thompson Bowling Arena, when it is on Saturday afternoons when there is a University of Tennessee football game, that stadium is, I think, the 5th largest city in the state of Tennessee. I think that's the stat on it. So, which is just unbelievable when you put it in perspective like that. So the second largest or largest town in the state of Idaho holds the same, has the same population as the stadium at the University of Texas, which is just
I was blessed. I got to go to when OU played. That's where I went to school. I went to University of Oklahoma. So when OU played Tennessee in Nashville, it was so loud that my ears rang for about 3 days. Like it was that many people just screaming. Like it broke the decibel, like the loudest ever venue. It was just insane. I mean, that's a really cool stadium. If you ever get a chance to go and see a football game in that stadium, it's pretty impressive.
I've heard it's really great. And with all due respect to the A&M fans that might be listening and everything, like their stadium is huge and their fans are always raucous and everything like that. But I've heard that Thompson Bowling Arena is just mind-numbingly like deafening. It's just absolutely deafening.
Now, what I will say about a Texas A&M football game is that their tailgates are pretty insane. So every no matter where I've been, everyone's very generous. But when you make it to Texas A&M and they're giving out some of the best barbecue, I wouldn't say the best, but really, really, really good barbecue from my experience. It's but I've always had fun. That's one of the cool things about when I get to travel is I always try to fit a game in. This year I didn't get any games in, but I always like to go to different people's tailgates to kind of see how they do it. I mean, the Grove is a really cool place. LSU is a really cool. I mean, some of the SEC places do a really good job for their pregame kind of stuff. So it's really fun to get around the country and see some of these universities play.
Hey, Bear, messages in our mic sets. Let me switch something real quick.
Yeah, and Danny, when you start talking, if we could get a little cozy on Mike's side a little bit, your audio's fading just a little bit, but Mike, you're still golden. So just wanted to point that out.
Better now?
What's that?
Does this sound better now?
Oh, it sounds perfect.
Okay, there you go.
And thank you so much for that. And so, I think that just on the final point on the subject of college football, and with all due respect to like the Big Ten and some of those power schools up there, Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, some of those programs and some of those colleges, college football down here in the South is like is on another level, like from every aspect: the tailgating, the fans, the stadiums, like just the rabid fanship. It's to me, it's just it's beyond comparison to anything else in the country. I just think it's crazy. But I mean, is that, Mike, you said you traveled around. Have you gone like just those programs? Have you gone to the Big House or like the Shoe or anything like that?
I haven't made it to a game. I've had a couple of stores up there threaten to get tickets, and every time I get up there, they don't come through. So,
oh man,
yeah. So but
they should at least come up your flight ticket at that point, man. If you're
yeah, so, but definitely they've offered, and then it's never kind of come to fruition. But I have had people say, "Hey, if you come up, this actually worked out for Danny. Whenever he got to the Boise game, whenever he went to up to that shop,
I got to the blue turf."
Yeah, so that usually, when I'm trying to work out my schedule, it's like who's playing and who's going to help me get tickets to make it to the game. So
I will say that Boise State Stadium looked like Leander High School Stadium. It was about that size. So we take it crazy serious here.
Yeah, high school football down here in Texas
is no joke.
Yeah, I mean the blue field notwithstanding, that stadium isn't very big, but it's so iconic and it's impressed on everyone's memory because of the blue turf and everything. And
they sell little donuts. That's where you get me at the concessions. I don't give a shit about the game, whatever. So I think they're called some girl's name donuts, mini donuts maybe, but they were mini donuts. But I don't know, $5 or $10, and you 30 or 40 of these little donuts.
Jeez,
fire!
My goodness. Yeah, that's definitely where they would get you anyway. I mean, between and then some colleges actually serve beer, which is just crazy to me. That was never done at my college, but apparently that's done, and I just think that would be just outlandish, especially with some of these rabid fan bases. I just can't imagine beers being sold at some of these games. But just to move on to it, I said we were going to kind of bounce around a little bit tonight, and so to kind of go back to the subject of the unique partnership that was formed to build the company of RoMa Craft, Mike. And I said it earlier. You're the kind of the yang to Skip's Ying, or however you want to see it, and everything. And I don't think I'm overstepping here when I say that like partnerships in this industry don't necessarily have a great track record. It takes two very unique individuals to make something work and make something work well and make it work for a long time. Now, I mean, you guys haven't been in business for decades, but the success that you guys have had in the fair amount of time that you guys have been together and done has been great, and it's been terrific. And I don't think anyone would argue with me on that. What do you think is, from your perspective, why do you think that the partnership between the two of you works so well?
Well, I think the best way to look at it is we kind of stay out of each other's way. So Skip will give me his input, and I'll give him my input. He obviously doesn't listen to mine, so that usually helps. But really, what he's really good at is giving me data. Right? If he can give me the data in his business background on how the company's performing, where we're lacking at, where we should improve at, his analysis that he's able to do. It really helps us give us the direction here on which way we need to improve on, right? So, but I don't go down to the factory. I don't tell them, hey, you should be doing, unless I see something flawed on my end or I'm getting feedback that needs to be shared. But for the most part, I don't step into the factory. I don't go and hey, you should be buying this or buying that. But he doesn't come up here and doesn't really try to really kind of get into what we're doing here with the accounts up in the United States, right? So someone says, hey, I've been trying to open up a RoMa Craft account, and Skip say, hey, you got to talk to Mike, right? That's a it's my decision whether or not we open that account or we don't, right? Does it make sense in what we're looking for, what we need? Does it fill a gap? Does it fill a void? Do we already have a lot of saturation in that market? That's my call. So really, the best way to describe it is, do we overlap in each other's kind of in the areas of expertise, right? And so there's not a lot of that. So I think really the best way to do it is he believes in my capability, and I believe in him, and we just kind of move forward from there.
So which it's not a foreign concept. It's just having trust in your teammates to be able to do their job, and everyone for the most part kind of stay in their lane a little bit, right?
I mean, all relationships are difficult, right? So whether it's your spouse, your girlfriend, your coworkers, the people that come into your retail shop, the people that we have to deal with, on a day-to-day basis, But if you understand that at the end of the day, you can have differences. I may not agree with your top 10, you may not agree with my top 10, but if we can kind of look at each other and you can kind of give me a reason that validates your opinion, and I can back mine up, right? And we can have a simple conversation and then go, okay, that's, So Skip and I kind of have to do the same thing. Okay, what's best for the company? Because it's not about Skip Martin, it's not about Mike Rosales, it's about this company and the legacy that we're going to leave behind and our imprint and footprint that we've left on this industry. So, all the other stuff, right? Teams getting hurt or being sensitive or whatever, it just really comes down to what's the performance like. Obviously, if I wasn't doing my job, you would let me know because the numbers don't lie. And so, or vice versa, if I said, hey, this isn't working out, but it's statistically or the data says it's not working out, then we have to look at it and go, what's best for the company and how do we make those changes and move forward. So, and we got to a point to where RoMa had grown to a point to where I couldn't handle all the accounts. And we got up to 325 accounts, especially when you factor in traveling and events and being on the road and everything else, which is why we ended up bringing in, Danny. Danny could see or Skip could see from a statistical kind of analysis that certain markets were being touched as frequent, or certain markets were, kind of slipping or whatever. So when you're kind of spinning all these plates, you look at it and go, okay, what's the best thing to, how do you get those plates up in the air from falling down? You need some help. So then we brought in Danny. And here recently, we just brought in John Oliver, who was with CIGAR. And so it got to a point to where, maybe Danny was going to move up. And so when you start kind of feeling that burden, you kind of look at it and go, okay, how do we fix it? And then how do we make it better? Are we all on the same page? Do we all have a good vision? And I think that's where Skip is really good at kind of giving a really good business perspective of where, what needs to be improved based on numbers, what needs to, where should we back off of? And, so that way we kind of have this equilibrium across the board. So, but essentially, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm very blessed to have a business partner like Skip. Whenever, I already had a cigar business, my cigar business was not doing as great as it could have been. But again, we're just kind of spinning on these plates. I'm not good at running numbers and analyzing. That's not my forte. That's obviously Skip's, bread and butter. That's where he comes from with Dell and his other business background. So, but again, understanding that all relationships are difficult and knowing that you have to put the time and the effort in, and you obviously have to know that there's a direction that you want to go. And if you're headed that, if you're all on the same page, then it just really works out.
So let's bring Danny in for that. So Danny, you're not part of the original partnership here. So from your perspective, I want to put you a little bit on the spot, and then I want to talk about you coming into the company as well here, and then with John here just recently. But from your perspective, why did you see this as a successful partnership, and that you ultimately decided to join the team? Why do you think it works between these two guys, and then ultimately bringing you in, and how did that help?
So essentially, I mean, in any business where there's two owners, you don't need two guys that have the same skill set, because then it just won't work, right? You'll have two guys that will either want to run the factory, or two guys that will want to run sales, or two guys that want to be the face, or two guys that want to, and that's usually why it doesn't really work, right? So if you have if both guys want to be the man, want to be the guy, the egos can sometimes get in the way, right? So like you said, Skip, social media wise, kind of takes the lead in that. Mike likes to kind of sit back and watch and hit everyone at the actual cigar shop and do the traveling and be more of a face-to-face kind of guy. And that's really why the partnership works, because not that Mike couldn't run a factory, but his skill set is better put to use in the relationship building, account handling, account managing here in the U.S. And Skip has the mentality to just be able to dive in and completely study something and understand it better than most people have ever understood it, just because he'll dedicate himself to learning that. So, which is kind of when he put he set his mind to learning tobacco, learning the process, learning factories, learning tobacco, learning Spanish. He was able to do all that while Mike already kind of had his foot in the door here regionally in Texas with his cigar. So it just made a lot of sense, right? So me, having a very, very small brand, but still being able to see the work that it takes to even do what I was doing on a very much smaller scale. It was pretty quick to see that the partnership was working, right? And I mean, like Mike says, with the data, you can see the growth, how it's just year over year, there was growth and growth and growth. So there was no fear of joining the partnership, or thinking like, well, what's this brand going to do? Are there any issues or this and that? So that's kind of my perspective on their partnership.
I think everybody wants to be the guy, right? So for me, like, my circle is really small. Like, I'm more, like, for me, like, we're having this conversation. Once people are listening to it, it's really just me and you, right? And this is intimate. It's very small. So we kind of dive into some subjects and kind of open up and really feel like you're really getting to know me or us, right? And vice versa. I enjoy that, right? It's whenever you want to be like in front of everybody, you want to be the man, and egos really kind of get in the way. I think that typically can kind of hurt. I know if you think about it, I think Drew has eight. With Jonathan, Drew, and Samuel. I mean, they had a really good partnership, but no one knew who the other one was. Everyone knows JB, right? But the other guy was the guy in the background, walking the halls in DC, and I wouldn't say he was a relationship guy, but I mean, no one really understood what his role was, right? It was all about
right.
Which is cool, right? I mean, it works out for them. They sold the company, they made a whole lot of money, and
my phone's blowing up that no one can hear or understand what we're saying.
Yeah, it's the audio is a little bit garbled, unfortunately. I think it's just the microphone and everything with the open mic. But can
we switch to an iPhone? Is it too late? Are we live? Can you follow me?
I mean, we are live. So what we can try to do to close it out, just to kind of get some final thoughts from Mike here, is we can go to a headset that should kind of narrow down the feed a little bit. But it was absolutely great to get your perspective on that, Danny. I really appreciate your time on this Sunday evening, and getting getting you to come up to the headquarters of RoMa Craft and getting your thoughts. So while Mike kind of gets that headset put together, just want to reset a little bit. We've been talking a little bit with Mike Rosales and Danny Vasquez of RoMa Craft Cigars, and we've been talking specifically about the partnership, among other things, the partnership specifically that started RoMa Craft Cigars, RoMa Craft Tobac, and the success that they've had early on in their business, and how very much that, you know, it's a team concept, which, you know, isn't terribly foreign, obviously, but, you know, it's with the two gentlemen, Mike and Skip, basically trusting each other to do and relying on each other to focus on their strengths rather than their weaknesses, and kind of, you know, to use Mike's words and to quote Mike here, to stay out of each other's way. And that's where the success has really come in. So really appreciate everyone tuning in and the patience that everyone's been going through with the audio trouble. So I do apologize for the technical difficulties. Mike, it looks like you got that headset hooked up. Why don't we give it an audio test real quick?
Check 1, 2. Check Mike.
Awesome. Can you turn up the volume just a little bit?
Turn it up?
Yeah, turn it up just a little bit.
The Danny, my IT guys. How about this? Better?
A little bit. So.
All right. Well, I don't know. Hang on. I can talk into the microphone. No, there's no microphone. It's all wireless.
No, that's pretty good. So again, Mike, thank you so much for your time tonight. So just to kind of wrap up here a little bit with a couple of last second questions. So the thing I wanted to ask you with this partnership, and with you guys expanding the team now, so now it's no longer a part. I mean, the ownership is still very much a partnership, but the team is becoming more than just the two of you. It's becoming a lot larger, and you guys have even more folks behind the scene other than Danny and John that you guys rely on. Where does RoMa Craft go from here? Like, is it going to be an every couple years thing where you guys are expanding by, you know, one main component, or are you guys looking to bring on these close-knit members into your team a little bit more frequently now?
You know, I think the size of the staff is probably best where it's at as of right now. We've looked at some other opportunities of trying to get a new factory. I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the space, right? And the available types of tobacco that we use. If you can't really get really good tobacco at the quality that we get, it makes it difficult to do expansion, right? So
sure.
Everyone is probably pretty aware of what had happened in Nicaragua, but last April, we were actually looking at buying, acquiring some land and trying to build a new factory. And that would be ideal. If we could, you know, when we moved into our factory about 4 or 5 years ago, you kind of walk in and go, man, how are we ever going to fill this place like a brand new house? Like, this house is so big, this facility is so big. And then you get to a point to where you can't make room for another person, and you know, and that's where we're at. We can't add more rollers. We can't. But the only thing that we could probably really do right now would probably be to work, you know, a late night shift. But you know, that doesn't really, doesn't happen. But if we could get our hands on another piece of land and build a factory the way that we would, you know, build it out from scratch, you know, that would be, you know, ideal. However, it still comes down to, can you get the raw material that you need to be able to grow at the rate? You know, so right now we're doing about 1.2 million cigars that are imported into the United States. You know, could we get up to 2.5, 3 million cigars? Absolutely. That's not a, you know, we have the capacity. We have, you know, the demand for the cigars. The challenge is really, is there an available supply of the tobacco that we use to make those? So, so that's the challenge. And so until then, you know, our staff will kind of stay what it is. So, you know, we brought in John Oliver to help, and we kind of split up the territories. So, you know, and to really kind of get the accounts that we have to where they feel like they're being supported, you know, where they have an endless amount of support, right? And I think that's you know, kind of where, you know, if you have traditional reps that go in and out of stores every day, They get to spend time. They can see their facings on the shelves. They can see what needs to be refilled. And we have to do that over phone, right? And so every time that you go in and you do it over phone, you know, and we do a really good job at it, probably better than anybody. But the you know, you're still kind of doing it with your hand tied behind your back, because I'm all of my information is based on what you give me over the phone, and we have to have that conversation of expanding lines and how do we make space, and how do we grow, and how do we expand, and how do we plan for future growth. And so what's really cool about having Danny and John is they understand that. You know, they understand that you know, how and what it takes to be able to have those types of calls, right? So how to get you into a situation where you can sit down and tell me, hey, these are all the SKUs that I have, and I can tell you these are all the SKUs that you've ever ordered. You know, I can look at it from a number and go, hey, you know, it's been 2 quarters since you ordered this size or that one. What's going on with that? And you say, well, it's slow. Okay, well, let's get that off the shelf. Let's put something else in there, and really kind of maneuver that, versus, you know, someone who can go into your store and kind of see it and go, hey, you know, why is this box still full? How come, you know, what's the story with this? And so anyway, so by bringing these other guys in and really kind of giving them the scale back and say, okay, hey, you know, you got 125 accounts more or less. Let's see how each one of them can dive in and penetrate and kind of get all the lines across everything that we sell, you know, and to spin those plates within the store.
So going back to the production, Mike, that's a really interesting point. So just taking, you know, looking at it from a different angle here. So you talked about getting being able to get the tobacco. Could you amp up to, say, even double the production or close
Sure.
to it? And you said, yes, you're absolutely at the capacity, but it's also about getting the proper product in. You know, where does that you talked about the analysis that you and Skip kind of go over and everything. And obviously you guys don't want to sacrifice on quality. That's been clear
Sure.
by your reputation and your company's stated lines in the past. But is there something to be said about using the tobacco that you guys do that is so hard to find, or perhaps branching off into other tobacco that is a little bit more readily available? Is it just y'all's palate that doesn't line up with that, or is there a specific business mantra that you guys are going after?
Well, the bigger challenge right now is FDA, right? So if you didn't have these ghost brands that a lot of manufacturers put out, then it makes it really difficult to expand in your portfolio, right? So we opted not to do that. So the things that we do, so for example, like when we released Black Irish, Black Irish came out in an EMH box because essentially it's an EMH box. It just has some candela in it, right? So you can change the blend. And so, you know, the Saber Tooth came out in the Aquitaine EMH box, right? So it's so you know, we're doing them in smaller amounts, but we're still within the guidelines of what FDA has kind of put out. But for us to come out with a whole new line and a whole new brand would be really difficult to do at this time because of FDA. Now, if FDA changes, then that completely opens up, you know, the opportunities, endless opportunities. You know, we'll go to, you know, so for example, recently, Drew Estate, and I'm going to talk freely because I'm a cigar nerd, but Drew Estate just kind of put out these factory smokes. Have you seen these cigars?
Yeah,
yeah,
familiar.
Okay, so the challenge with doing something like that now is every time you introduce a new line, and let's say it's a really good cigar at a better price point, is you sacrifice, again, there's only so much of the pie that goes around. There's only so many opportunities for people that come into the door that buy cigars. And so if you put out a pretty good cigar at a very low price point, you have the potential to cannibalize sales in some of your higher premium lines. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I think that's something that my partner on Cigar Coop Primetime, Coop, has mentioned as a big coup for you guys, is that nobody, you guys haven't discontinued any lines, where that's a frequent occurrence among other competing cigar companies out there is that, you know, if cigar line doesn't do well, it goes discontinued and everything.
Right.
And that's something that hasn't happened with RoMa Craft. Now, albeit in some comparison, it's not fair to compare in some cases because we are talking about longer history with some of these other companies. But even, you know, even recently with some companies that release cigars in the same amount of time that you guys have existed, some lines have been discontinued. So I think that is a valid bravo to you guys, that you guys have continued to put out this quality product that doesn't, you know, compromise. And so, and therefore it shows, and the loyalty to the brand still stands. And that's why your core lines are so strong.
Sure.
And when you do release these, what I call fun projects a little bit, you know, they're even more sought after, and they're, you know, you get those buys on because you have such a loyal base to that core line that's been so well established.
Well, yeah, you're kind of throwing out like a, you know, it's not, you don't think throwing out a bone, but you're throwing out a little nugget for the guys that support you as it is, right? So, you know, unfortunately, we can't make enough of those types of cigars. You know, the Black Irish, for example. I mean, I think we did like 250 boxes that went out, and every time I do an event, somebody comes up and goes, "Hey, where are the Black Irish?" It's like, well, you know, hey, those are gone. You know, craft, you know, that's gone. You know, and you know, so we're very, very blessed. You know, when we released Neanderthal at a $12 price point, you know, when I was, you know, taking sales for that at the trade show, you know, I didn't, you know, in my mind, and I'll use another analogy from somebody else, but the small batch from La Flor Dominicana, right? The annual
LG small batch, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you know, if you're a La Flor guy, you know, you probably come in, you pick up one or two of those, because it's a fairly expensive cigar, you know, but it's a great cigar. And then you go and you pick up your Digger, your Chisel, and, you know, your box of whatever, you know, your DL700s, or, you know, whatever it is that you like. And then, but you only picked up one or two of those small batch because the price point is it's a big jump from, you know, the other $8 to $12 kind of stuff that you're smoking. I kind of anticipated Neanderthal to be that kind of the same thing, right? So people come in, they pick up one or two Neanderthal, and then they would go and they pick up several Cro-Magnon, Aquitaine, and, you know, a few Intemperance because of the price point, because you get a really good product for a fair price at those other lines. You know, we weren't prepared for.
You were wrong.
The demand for Neanderthal, right? People come, you know, I had guys come in and buy, you know, boxes, you know, a 50-count box, $600, you know, and it's like, whoa, you know, again, sometimes the consumers, you know, you think you can figure this out, and then all of a sudden they do something completely, you know, about face. And but that's what makes this industry so fun, is that you know, at any given level, we were kind of talking about this off air, is that right now there's so many good cigars available that are fairly priced, you know. And I think you're starting to see a lot of cigars actually you're seeing, you know, the demand for tobacco. Tobacco prices continue to go up, and so do cigars, unfortunately. And then obviously with, you know, FDA imposing, you know, some of the stuff that they're imposing to get them across the board, you know, to bring them into the States. You know, I was talking, you know, off air, I told you that the one-off, the 53 was one of my favorite cigars that I was smoking right now. It's a $30 cigar, right? So you're starting to see, you know, cigars kind of creep up into prices that hadn't really been there in the last, you know, probably since 2007 to, you know, probably, I guess, 2014 or so. You know, there were a lot of great cigars at that $7, $8 price point. Well, now you're starting to see a lot of them kind of creep up into that, you know, $12, $13, $14 price point that, you know, but again, the consumers are still buying them. And as long as consumers understand that, you know, tobacco costs are going up, production costs go up, transportation's gone up. There's a lot of things that factor into pricing and price increases. You know, just this year, you know, I don't know if people know this or not, but FedEx probably about 2 or 3 years ago stopped transporting. They stopped shipping tobacco products.
Yeah.
That leaves you with UPS. Well, UPS at the beginning of the year had a 4% price increase, you know, across the board, right? So you'll see shipping charges go up, which will, you know, ultimately reflect at the cashier level of, you know, 25, 30 cents, you know, when it's all said and done per cigar, right? So you're seeing tobacco go up. When we started making the Brazilian in the BA and the Intemperance BA, we were buying Brazilian Arapiraca for $19 a pound, you know, and then, you know, they trade in the euro, and overnight it jumped up to $28, $29 a pound. And you know, Ecuador, Connecticut, you know, I'm going on and on about prices of tobacco, but ultimately the demand has gone up, cigar consumers and consumption has gone up, and thus, you know, that makes it really hard to acquire really good tobacco at the level that we need it. And you know, every time we get a chance to buy something, even if we're buying it for 2 or 3 years ahead of time, we're investing the money to acquire the tobacco to make sure that, you know, we're going to be around. The reality is that, you know, when you start doing like Cro-Magnon broadleaf or the U.S. Connecticut broadleaf, there's only so much of it that's produced, and
yeah,
you know, so it really makes it, when we sit down and we kind of look at our plan for the year and go, how many cigars can we produce? You know, it's going to be under 350,000 cigars, which is not a lot in the different sizes that we have. Just because, you know, by the time that you get it, you know, through fermentation and get it out, and you start breaking it down, you start looking at what the yields are. You know, it used to be that we were probably at 12 to 13 pounds per thousand. You know, now we probably need 17, 18 pounds per thousand. You know, which really what that means is the usable tobacco that you have bought is just not where it needs to be. So.
Yeah, I think you bring about a valid point though about where price point is on cigars. You know, the consumer ultimately dictates what the median cigar price is, and for the average retailer to go in, you know, I've been in the retail game for, you know, a little less than 10 years at this point, and you know, that average price has jumped up considerably for where it started, where the kind of the wheelhouse is, so to speak. I used to have, in fact, I still maintain, and this is a credit to folks like you, Mike, is I still maintain that at the $15 price point, $15, I get insanely picky if I have to pay more than $15 for a cigar. I get insane. I start really getting really picky. If it's $15.01, it better be worth that extra penny that I'm paying.
Right.
Like that's kind of been my joke. But to that point though, cigars like the Neanderthal, which are close to that $15 price point, and the one-off that you mentioned, and some other great cigars that have been released that are well beyond that or hitting right that mark, they're so fantastic that it really they are truly worth that dollar point. So yeah, you are seeing the Neanderthal fly off the shelf at, you know, at crate at the time, when in essence your original thought was that they were going to come, a consumer would come in, pick up a couple of those, and then, you know, buy a box or two of like the Intemperance or an Aquitaine, so to speak, or something like that. So I think that is a credit to the quality that you guys are putting into the work and not compromising on that. What I find really interesting though, about RoMa Craft specifically it was within the blending, is the fact that you guys use a lot, you guys keep things very simple, but you, even in that simplicity, you still get insanely creative and can build insanely complex blends. You know, using wrapper leaves in a binder format and using binder leaves in filler sometimes, and cigars that you traditionally see, or excuse me, tobacco that you traditionally see in those places on a cigar, you've kind of flipped it around and changed it around and everything like that. But even at $12, the higher price point that you guys have at the Neanderthal, there is a lot of high priced and high value tobacco, and a lot of tobacco in that cigar.
Sure.
So
you start looking at it. I mean, we use a lot of American tobacco, which is Pennsylvania broadleaf. We have the U.S. Connecticut broadleaf. You know, it's when you kind of look at the fact, I mean, we're really blessed. I mean, the fact that we can produce cigars in other countries, that we feel like we pay a very fair wage at the factory level. But if those, I mean, look at the cigars that are produced out of Miami, and look at the price point, right? I mean, you have to pay, I mean, wages that support the economy, right? So I mean,
of course,
if someone's not going to sit, they're going to sit in the chair and make cigars, and they can go out and do something else and get paid, equivalent money doing something else. It's just, so even though there's a skill set there, you have to take care and provide for your family. So,
well, just to put that in perspective, if the Neanderthal was made at say, you know, a factory in Miami, let's just say El Teton de Bronze or something like that, the price point, you know, the
20s.
price point would jump up immediately by $5 conservatively.
Sure.
You know,
Absolutely.
because it's made in an American factory. The quality is still there, and that the reputation of that factory notwithstanding, which is excellent. You know, one could argue that you know you're getting maybe a superior product by a little bit, but that's to me that's really interesting that you guys are still able to build on that quality, build on that simplicity, and create insanely competitive and very highly sought after cigars from the perspective. And then throw in the last curveball that I will, Mike, just to kind of put the eye on the dot on the I here. You guys do this all without advertising, formal advertising, that is.
Sure. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is, can you put out a cigar that's fairly priced, you know, for the value that you get, right? We really believe that we're putting out cigars at the $8, $9, $10 value price point that rival anything that's out there for $12, $13, $14, right? Kind of like what you were saying. If your maximum kind of top line is $15 per cigar, right? Unless it's a celebratory type of cigar, kind of the standard is a Padron, right? And if you're, you know, or Davidoff, you know, because that's somehow they've been kind of dubbed the celebratory kind of price point. People are willing to spend, you know, plus $20 for those cigars because they're really, really good cigars. However, as a consumer, you know, as a cigar nerd, I look at it and go, okay, can you know, Skip and I kind of take this approach. Can we produce a cigar at this price point, and what's kind of what's the value? Like, how much would you, like, if I gave you a sample and I said, hey, would you smoke this cigar with nothing, you didn't know anything about the cigar, and you kind of you light it, you cut it, you smell it, you know, you do everything that your kind of ritual, you know, allows you to do when you're kind of when you're going to taste the cigar for maybe one of your reviews, and you kind of get into the cigar and you said, man, you know, it's either really, really good, great, or it's okay, or it's okay, right? And you start kind of going through your realm of things that you've already had in the past. You go, how do I apply what I'm smoking to what I've had in the past? And then you kind of look at it, okay, well, man, this is up here with X, right? So let's say, you know, your EPC, that was number one, right? So if that's your number one cigar of the year, and that's your threshold for how you want to rate, or your Hoya cigar that was number two, right? Like, that's your standard for last year's releases. Where does this cigar kind of fit in between, you know, 10 and 1? So, and if I said, hey, you know, would you pay $12 for the cigar? Absolutely. You know, what if I told you it was 8? You're like, man, for the money, that's a fantastic cigar. So, well, we look at it and we go, okay, what does it cost to produce a cigar, plus a very small margin for the factory so it can kind of run? And then we bring it into the stateside, and we set it based on, you know, what do I think that cigar in the marketplace, you know, to be able to really capture a good amount of the market share at a fast rate. And that's really kind of been our way of kind of looking at where do cigars kind of fit in the marketplace. Like, what does it cost to produce it, and how do we get it out? But because we don't pay for reps, and we don't pay for brokers, and we don't pay for advertising, you can take a good portion of the cigar pricing out of it and put it on the shelves at a really fair price, because you don't have to factor in those other costs that are associated. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's proven to be exceedingly successful for you guys. So, Michael, I'll close with this final question, because it's a question I like to ask, and for you, I think it's going to be bring a unique perspective to our listeners and viewers. Is that, you know, you guys are not multi-generational people. You know, this isn't you aren't you know, the 5th generation like some folks, the 4th generation, or even the 2nd generation. But you guys have established a brand that has, you know, in its very early history, or what we would hope to be characterized as its very early history, to be incredibly successful. Are you hoping to build a foundation that one day Adrian could come in and step in and take in the reins?
Well, you know, it's funny. Adrian was in here today. He was cleaning, and he actually helped me unpack some boxes. So, you know, listen, at the end, yes, to answer your question quickly, yes, absolutely. I think it's a beautiful industry. I mean, the people and the friendships, and there's nothing like it, right? I mean, I'm very blessed. I get to go all over the world and travel around, whether it's in Europe or here in the States. There's always a cast of characters that become very familiar with your brand and with you, and they follow you on social media. And, you know, but more than that, it's the relationships that you make that like I'm very blessed to be able to have the friends that I've been able to cultivate over the years, and I would love to share that with my son or even my daughter, right? So that's something that if they choose to if we're not outlawed and banned in the tobacco industry, by the time that they're of age, but absolutely, I think that that's why we do what we do, right? So it's been a great ride. I mean, listen, we talk about it all the time. This is not an industry that people just walk away from, and people constantly ask you, how do you get into it? It's very difficult to get into. And then finally, once you do get into it, like, how do you maintain and stay relevant, right? And which is a challenge, right? Because if you allow yourself to just kind of, become mundane and just kind of, day to day just become just laissez-faire, then there's no excitement to that, and all of a sudden, people aren't buying your cigars anymore. But I think as long as we continue to put out the product that we are at the level that we do, at the price point that we have it at, we're pretty, we're in a really good position to be here for a long, long time. So.
Absolutely. And Mike, I got to thank you again for stepping away from your family for Sunday night chat with me, and for all of our viewers that tuned in and all our listeners that are going to be listening. I really appreciate all your time as well. Thank you for bearing with us through the technical difficulties. We really appreciate it. But 2019 seems to be set up for another fantastic year for RoMa Craft. The year of the Aquitaine, as quoted by Mike Rosales, my guest tonight on ELOSOFUMARTAKES, Take 62. We're looking to see to see the Mastodon Aquitaine, as well as the Slobberknocker Aquitaine, a project from Cigar Dojo, and many others to be hitting your shelves soon in the during the year of 2019. A really, really fantastic year to come. Some fantastic years in the past, and Mike, as always, it's always my pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, man.
Absolutely, sir. And Danny, if he's still sitting there in the background, we really appreciate Danny driving up to the office tonight to join us for a little bit as well. And we appreciate all of you guys for tuning in tonight. So, Mike, I will toast your Pellegrino 2018 vintage with my 2017 vintage High West Barrel Age Victory at the Sea by Ballast Point.
Salute.
Salute, sir. So I appreciate everyone tuning in, all your likes, shares, and comments. Remember, we are now on audio, so you can download us and listen to us on the way to work. Be sure to tune in and subscribe and leave a review. iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you listen to podcasts. We're available at #ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This was our 60-second take. And as always, I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, and we really appreciate you. And guess what? We'll see you next time.